Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home, and it's a gorgeous day as we enter Memorial Day weekend, and I thought it would be a great time for a garden tour, so I hope you join us. How you doing? Thanks for joining us today. So initially I had wanted to give a May tour earlier in the month, but not to belabor you with my scheduling issues, but thankfully I had some nice out-of-town visitors Mother's Day week, which was very nice, but I lost a tremendous amount of time in the garden. And prior to that, beginning of the month, we had a torrential rain for, I don't know, days on end. So May, garden-wise, was cut a little bit short. So I have been trying to make up for it over the last couple of days, breaking my 1 to 1.5 hour rule that if you remember in a couple of videos ago, I said that I'm really trying to kind of stick to only an hour and a half, but every day in the garden to make progress and also to help myself kind of ease back into gardening, not be so hard on my back and my legs and that kind of thing. Well, that went out the window. So yes, my back hurts, my legs hurt, I'm achy, my arms hurt, whatever. I feel like I finally got some good progress this week, so I thought I'd take you around. If you've seen my videos before, you know I've had this upside down pot with a little plate on top of it and this solar fountain for a while. And I was going to make an instant garden bed, which I was going to videotape, but I didn't. I changed my mind. What I decided instead was I would move some of my rose plants and the fig tree and the hibiscus into this area. One reason it was to kind of declutter around the patio. It was getting a little bit crowded with all the pots and stuff, but also to make this more like a real kind of a feature of the garden. I'm liking it already, even though nothing started blooming yet. And what I did was I put down cardboard, and then I put down wood chips on top of that. And it was very easy. The only difficulty I would say in this is that this is on a slope. So I did have to kind of stick some rocks to get everything kind of even. So, oh look, I have a little rosebud. Another big job, which wasn't mine, my son actually did this for us, is he power washed the fence. And it had gotten very green with, I guess, I don't know, mold, algae, whatever that could possibly be. We're right by the water, so it is very damp here. We rented it from the power wash machine from Home Depot. It was only $48 for the day. And I'm so pleased with the way it came out. In what I call the shade garden here, I planted up a whole bunch of impatiens. There's 18 impatiens in here. And mixed in with it, I've got this pretty little, it's like in the family of the coleus plant. It's called pocketbook, I believe. It's adorable, and I thought those pink and green leaves went so beautifully with the salmon color of the impatiens. And then over here, I decided, yes, it's an upside down pot. I decided I'm going to put my house plants out here. This is actually a hydrangea, a blue hydrangea underneath St. Francis. Here's some lily of the valley, and I'm going to pop that in some holes in this. This is cosmos, a little bit of chamomile, a couple of zinnias, and some sweet peas that have just recently popped up. And I'm hoping to grow the sweet peas up along this pine tree here amongst all those twigs and things. More cosmos over here. Borax. borage and calendula. And then here is what I'm calling the medicinal flower bed. I've got borage, echinacea, chamomile. Oh, my mind's blanking. What is that? I just said the word. Oh, calendula. Duh. Let's see. I've got some lilies in here. These are babies, so I'm hoping they'll bloom this year. If not, maybe next year. We've got some Swiss chard here going to flower. This is actually a 2.5 to 3-year-old plant. I planted this in the fall of 2021, and it's just going to seed now. But I've got some more Swiss chard behind it. The lavender's got some buds starting. And this lavender row, it already smells wonderful. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous when it blooms. I didn't really have space for all of these leeks that I planted, so I transplanted them into this pot, and they're already starting to thicken up a little bit. And what I'm hoping is by the time that the garlic needs to be harvested, I can replace the leeks where the garlic was. The sweet peas are just starting to climb. They're very slow growing. I was hoping they'd be further along by now, considering I started them way back in early February. Here's the eggplant and another eggplant, and these are actually from the nursery. I needed to replace the ones that I started because those got infested by aphids, and although they're not completely dead, they were so scrawny, I don't think that they would make it. So I got 2 replacement plants, and I planted these out last week. They're doing well. Got the garlic as a little fence here. Here's a carrot that's going to flower. I like watching carrots go to flower. It attracts all kinds of really nice pollinators. And then behind there is a parsley, which is also going to be going to flower soon. Coming over this way, it's my little garden kneeler. We've got peas. And the reason that this plant here is so farther along than this plant is because this plant, well, plants, there's a bunch of them in there. When they were seedlings, something came along and ate their little heads off. Didn't kill them, just knocked them back a little bit. But it's starting to grow up the cattle panel. Here's some mint mixed in with weeds. Still got to clear that out. In this large center bed here, I have so many different things growing that I often forget to mention everything, but what we have here is some garlic, and this garlic is really kind of on the way out. You can see the difference between that garlic and this garlic. So I'm going to be pulling that soon. This was, I remember in this bed here, I planted garlic from cloves from the supermarket. So not only are they not as hardy as the ones that I ordered online, but they're also flopping over and are done a lot earlier. I thought that was interesting. Had a large couple of plants of broccoli rabe that I had overwintered. I pulled those. As you can see, they were huge. And I needed to pull them to make room for the tomatoes. Which did very well. These are all ones that I started from seed. Another carrot going to seed here. And I've got 10 tomato plants in here. They're all different types of varieties. In the center here is celery. I love growing celery because my nephew, the guinea pig, absolutely loves it, and I end up picking a lot for him. Here's a smaller broccoli rabe that I actually didn't overwinter. I started it in the spring. So I'm just, it had started to flower. I cut that back and I was just curious to see if anything would grow on. But in the center here, where the broccoli rabe were on this side, I am going to be planting beets. I peppered in some marigolds and basil. Some of the basil is doing well. Some of the basil is not. I might have to replace it. I'm going to see if it pulls through first. I've got onions. That's the small things here that look like grass growing along this side. And I have fennel in here as well. On this side of the deck, I've got the lady reading to her little girl, which reminds me very much of my aunt and I. She was a school teacher. And on either side of her, my mother gave me these lilac bushes, and I need to find better pots, but I'm very pleased the way it looks over here. And then behind her is the butterfly bush that I thought died over the winter, but it didn't. It started coming back rather late. So that was a lesson learned, to be patient. Before you think something is completely dead in the springtime, give it some time. So as you can see, it's got a whole bunch of new growth. I cleared out this bed, and what I'm going to plant here, I was going to plant tomatoes, but I didn't have as many tomatoes as I thought. So, but I do have extra peppers. So I decided I'm going to be planting peppers in this bed here. And I'm also going to be planting a lot more varieties of beans. Now these beans here, oh, look at that. Somebody ate their heads off. I'm going to say bunny rabbit. Anyway, hopefully those will keep growing. But I do have to sow a lot of beans to make sure that some pull through with the wild critters eating their heads off all the time. But the beans do very well, the pole beans do very well here, because as you can see, they can climb straight up the deck. They get huge. I can even harvest them from off of the deck, which is kind of cool. I'll be planting up this area soon with cucumbers and sunflowers. I haven't gotten to that yet. Coming over here, I planted up this planter with pretty petunias in red, white, and blue, and some marigolds in this pot. And along this row here, I had planted some carrots early on in April, and only a few of them germinated. I'm very disappointed. I'm going to try again, but I'm worried that we're getting into what's going to be a rather hot couple of months, and they're just not going to do well. So I'll have to decide whether, if I do plant more carrots, I'm going to have to do it soon. The potatoes are doing very well. These potatoes I planted out in April, maybe end of March, and they were red organic potatoes from the supermarket. These potatoes are all different kinds of varieties, and these are ones that I ordered. So I'm curious to know the difference. I did do an experiment a couple of years ago between ordered seed potatoes and supermarket potatoes, and the yields were very, very similar. And the supermarket potatoes were much cheaper. But I wanted to try a couple of different varieties this year. I've got some purple ones and some red ones and some fingerlings, so that should be fun. Planted up more petunias in these containers that kind of just act as a containing wall. I pulled off the frost covering that I had covering these, and really the reason that I had these covering the brassicas was because of the rabbits. And as you can see, right in the middle there, I had forgotten I planted that. That's a Romanesco broccoli, which is in the cauliflower family, I believe. It gets a big, odd shape, looks almost like one of those amethyst geodes, only yellow. Very sweet, very tender, cauliflower looking, tasty thing. So I'm hoping that that'll do okay. My cabbage, third year in a row, not too terrific. I lifted this up. I had 6 of them planted. This one, I don't know what happened. I probably, if I had the cloth over it, I could have taken better care of it, but it looks like it's just on its way out. This is hopefully one that will actually come through. And then I've got a wild borage growing right here where another cabbage was supposed to be. So in this empty space here, I'm either going to plant beets, or if I have extra peppers that I can't fit, I'm going to go ahead and plant just a couple of peppers in here. More potatoes. So these grow bags are terrific, and for the amount of space that they take up, I've got 16 over here. In this row where the carrots were supposed to be growing, see, I just don't have this one carrot here. Peppers are going to go here. And then this long bed here, which gets wider every year too, as I want more space, is what I call tomato row, and I planted up 9 tomato plants, and most of these are, hold on, this section here are all Berkeley tie-dye, one of my favorites. It's kind of a dark purpley, stripy tomato. And then over here is Kellogg's Breakfast, these 4 over there. And I'm not sure if I'm going to like Kellogg's Breakfast, but I've heard a lot of good things about them, so I'm excited to try them this year. I've got broccoli on this side as well, a couple of volunteer borage plants. Over here I've got some volunteer calendula, pardon my shadow, more volunteer calendula. And then on this side, that way, is cauliflower. One of them didn't make it. It was supposed to be right there. So I'll be filling in holes with various sprouts and seeds shortly. What I might do in the areas that didn't take off is put in some bush beans. Oop, got a head starting. That's a Walden broccoli. And of course, lots of garlic. And in these 2 grow bags here, I did this successfully last year. These are all cherry tomatoes, and I packed them in, 3 in each grow bag. They're big grow bags. I can't remember how many gallons, but they spread all up this wall and onto the that nylon fencing that I have hanging, which comes in really, it's like my favorite way now of trellising my tomatoes. Up here on the patio, I also have the pansies, and when they start fading because of the heat, what I'll do is I'll move them into the shade, which I did last year, and hopefully they'll make it through the summer and then rebound in the fall. I also have here some begonias and lobelia and some coleus that I actually propagated from plants from last year. And the plan for that is I'm going to do hanging baskets on the fence. Coming up onto the deck, the green stalk is going through a bit of transition. I pulled whatever spinach was in there, and started some new things, including lettuce. And I put in a little patio tomato. My mother ordered these patio tomatoes. They look like they're like just for a small pot. And they bush out, but they don't get very tall at all. And I'm wondering if it'll work here in the green stalk, so I tried it. This beauty is the sage that I planted last year, and it overwintered, and it's flowering. I've never gotten to the point with sage before that it flowered, so I'm excited about that. The lettuce is doing well as long as I keep this really well watered. They're nice and crispy, although the arugula started going to flower. So we've been having rather cool evenings, nighttime temperatures in the high 40s over the last a couple of days, and it hasn't really gotten past mid-50s at night. That's Fahrenheit. So it's been keeping the lettuce, I think, going a lot longer than it normally does. But eventually, these will all peter out, and I'll be planting some other things up in here, although I'm not really sure yet what. I did transplant some of the purple opal basil, and I might try some summer heat-resistant types of lettuces, types of greens. This is my very old basil plant. It's now in its 4th year. It looks kind of funny, but it keeps on growing. And this was actually a separate basil plant that I propagated from this one. So I gave its home in the pot of its parent. Strawberries are bonkers. Absolutely going crazy this year. I do have a little bit of this fungus on here, and I sprayed it with some copper fungal spray, which is organic. So let's see if that helps take care of it. I'm going to probably have to repeat it. But pretty strawberry flowers. And we're just starting to ripen up a couple of strawberries. But I'm really pleased with how this filled out this year. And actually kind of surprised because these strawberries are on their 3rd year. It just likes living in this cart. Here's a geranium. I didn't start this from seed. I bought this at the local flower sale, but I always do a geranium in here because I've talked about this before. This cart is a tribute to my aunt who passed, and her very favorite dessert was berries and cream. So I have the blueberries growing next to the strawberries, and then the red geranium was her favorite flower. Under here is a little rosemary plant that I also started, I propagated last year. Now that I know how to do it, and I'm going to get more, and I'm a little bit more confident in it, I'm going to try a lot more propagating. Coming over here, if you didn't have the pleasure of knowing him, may he rest in peace. This is Mancini the Peperoncini. He was my single seed challenge of 2022. I nurtured him, I babied him. He grew healthy. I got a lot of harvest from him. I got seeds from him, which I started new plants from. But ultimately, he succumbed to the aphid infestation that was in my house. I just couldn't get him to spring back. But I wanted to let you know the outcome. Over here, in these little small grow bags, I've planted 3 different varieties of cucumbers. I have Muncher, Ashley, and Space Master. And my idea with this is I'd start them in the grow bags, and rather than transplant them, I'd keep them up here so the rabbits didn't eat their heads off, and then I'm going to put them out into the garden in the grow bags. I'm not going to transplant them. And hopefully they'll grow up the deck. In these deck containers here are my herbs. I pulled the spinach because that all started to bolt and go to flower. And in here I have, starting from this side, I've got dill, sage, I've got cinnamon basil, and then I've got another one of these patio tomatoes that I hope will grow. And this is Italian flat leaf basil. And then in the back, I've got marigolds and purple opal basil. Got parsley. We've got some cilantro about ready to go to seed. And then the seeds are called coriander. Rosemary, thyme, and chives. And in this pot, what's growing is nasturtium. I lost my nasturtium also to the stupid aphids. All of the seedlings that I started back in during the winter. And my idea here was just to throw these seeds into a pot, into this grow bag, and let them grow, and then transplant them into where their final home is going to be, which I don't know yet. It's really going to be where I have holes in the different garden beds and such. In this container is oregano and catnip, and then behind on this side, which I can't really get to right now, is also thyme and catnip. Here's the paprika plant that I overwintered inside last year, and that's doing pretty well. As you can see, it started to rebound with new growth. Here's some zucchini and golden gooseneck squash, summer squash, that I started May 13th, just about 2 weeks ago. They're growing really, really fast. I've got them in these really big pots. And actually tonight is the first night they're going to live outside in the greenhouse. I'm not closing up the greenhouse anymore. Even though it's cooler than normal, there's really no need for me to close it up. There's no chance of frost coming. I've got back there some pansies, which were very slow growing, so maybe they'll be ready by the fall. Some lemon balm, more leeks. And this, I think, is a verbena. It was a flower that I got at Easter. Anyway, it died back, and now it's starting to grow back again, so I put it in a separate pot. Some alyssum here, marigolds, chamomile, more calendula, more basil. So all of these plants are going to be kind of peppered in wherever I've got some holes in the garden beds. Speaking of peppers, here they are. They're really not looking very good. They had a terrible aphid problem. I'd been treating them. I did a video on how I did that. But what I'm hoping is that once they get into the ground, they'll start taking off. And I haven't planted them out yet because I needed to get so many other things into the ground. And truthfully, they really like it when the evenings are like in the 60s or so. So even though it's not too early to plant them, it's not hurting them not to be in the ground yet. And here is my single seed challenge 2023. Auchi, the artichoke, the fourth. This was my fourth attempt at growing an artichoke from seed. As you may know, with the single seed challenge, the challenge is to start with only one seed. So I did that, and for weeks this winter, I kept trying and trying and trying, and finally, this globe artichoke has taken off, and I'll be transplanting that soon. So I wanted to let you know that if you're curious as to how I plant my tomatoes or my potatoes or the peppers, I did videos last year on how to do all of that. So I'm going to link those videos below. I'm sure you could also find it in my playlist called How To's. I also want to say a word as we enter into what is, around here anyway, considered the unofficial start of summer, Memorial Day weekend. It's a lot of fun, a lot of barbecues, people go to the beach, to the pools open up and that kind of thing. But I also want us to remember why we have Memorial Day. It's not really a celebration of summer coming. What it really is, for those of you who don't live in the United States, you might not know, but it's a day that nationally we remember all of those fallen heroes, the men and women of our armed services that fought for us and died. So if you can take a few minutes during your festivities this weekend and think about what their sacrifice was for us. And thank a veteran while you're at it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. I hope you subscribe and watch the videos that I come out with throughout the year, all about how I take care of my little backyard garden and grow as much food as possible, and also try to make it pretty. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. From the Ladies Garden and Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye. Say goodbye, lady.